Brothers in Christ, welcome to the Meaning of Catholic. As I adjust my screen, my name is Luis Medina. I'm so glad to be back in the Meaning of Catholic. Happy New Year. Obviously, Merry Christmas. As we know, we're still celebrating the Christmas season. And we're back after a little Christmas break, much needed Christmas break. We're back in gear. Praise be to God. A new year, new projects, a new beginnings. Like a lot of you with resolutions. Lots of stories, which I would love to hear, by the way, in the comments. Please, thanks and join us up here. Thanks for joining us, and feel free to comment. And we're going to talk about a very interesting topic this episode of Reconquista, Reconquest, on the Minute of Catholic here on YouTube. By the way, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, and obviously, please share. And if you want to support the Minute of Catholic, click the links for the Patreon account of the Minute of Catholic. It will do wonders for all this great lay apostolate. Anyway, we have a lot of news. Obviously, there's a lot of things going on the Spanish side. Everything's going great. There's a lot of news talking about political movements and adjustments. Geopolitics is gaining more traction down there in all the Spanish-speaking countries, and so on. But this time, and by the way, let me take a little drink of my customized cup. Best way to stay healthy, drink some nice tea. After so much bourbon during the holidays, tea is awesome. Thank you, brother. I started seeing some of y'all already starting joining the chat. Thank you very much. We'll read your comments in a little bit, and I love to hear what stories, what you got for Christmas, what you're gonna do. In the not to sidetrack very much, but I don't know if you guys knew this. In the Spanish-speaking world, I will say actually if you take half of Mexico, the northern half, if you take the north and then everything else south from Mexico, it's very traditional to not have Christmas gifts on Christmas. Actually, the gifts are for Epiphany, which kind of makes sense, to be honest. The tradition that the U.S.'s influence in northern Mexico and now throughout the world has spread this idea of the concept of giving gifts, at least the American style, on the 25th. And I noticed this because when I was married in that time, my wife at that time was Protestant before she converted. I noticed, culturally speaking, all this hype was built up. First of all, as you know, and culturally, like the society and media and all that, the Christmas season starts supposedly after Thanksgiving, which we all know is actually during Christmas for 12 days all the way to Epiphany. But anyway, so they, hype it up, they build it up, and all to arrive at this December 25th kind of thing. And the attitude, I'm not saying every single Protestant church, obviously not even every single evangelical church. I'm just saying from the experience that I got and different Protestant, specifically evangelical churches, was you hype up this date, the 25th, and then you open the gifts, and then that's it. You have fun that day, but then you have winter. Gloomy days, and your toys are no longer so shiny anymore, and you're not necessarily very happy and all that. Whereas the tradition that I was more familiarized with, really, the Hispanics hype it up all the way to 24 because of the Mass, obviously. So you go to Christmas Eve Mass, in Spanish called Misa de Gallo, literally the rooster's mass, like when the rooster crows, alluding to that concept. And so you go to Mass, after Mass, that's why the 24th, by the way, is such a big deal in the Spanish-speaking countries, because after the Mass on the eve of the 24th, now it's Christmas, and now it's feasting and partying and drinking and dancing and all those things that we like to do. And then you open gifts and all that, and then you go to Mass on the 25th. Some of them with some hangover, but it doesn't matter. You go to Mass. Well, it's two different concepts, and then you still have 12 days of feasting, which, as many of you guys know, has a high emphasis on familiar themes. The Holy Innocents, the Holy Family, the Blessed Mother, things like that. So all the way to the presentation of the Lord. Well, in the some Protestant experiences, some evangelical Protestant experiences, is basically just you get to the top of the hill, let me put it that way, on the 25th. Open gifts, that's it. Some of them don't even go to church that day, their services, because it's Christmas, the day of rest, which I know doesn't make a lot of sense, because this is the day to go to church of all days of the year. It's like, what do you mean? Why should we go to church? Yeah, of course, this is the day. So you open gifts, and really Christmas is focused, of course, in Christ, but really culturally speaking, is focused more on the gift opening, and the fact that if your kid does not have a gift, Christmas is ruined. Where in more traditional societies, let me put it that way, which is changing also, by the way, more traditional societies, it's all about like the Mass and the feast and dancing. Then on the presentation, January 6th, you have the gift giving, which next week episode we'll talk about. January 6th, Dia de Reyes, Epiphany, or the Day of the Wise Men. Why it's such a big deal? And it's actually a really neat feast day as well. We have these Rosca de Reyes, which is this king's cake. You've seen something similar in Louisiana, and there's a reason behind why it's designed that way and all that. We'll talk about all those great things in the feast and traditions and whatnot, and I'll like to hear all those experiences from your family as well, because this is about sharing, by the way. This is about feeding each other and helping and learning and enriching each other from our experiences. So anyway, so you have these two contrasts. Once you start understanding the concept of the Catholic understanding of Christmas, and even some high Protestant churches like Episcopalians and Anglicans and Methodists and all that, it changes your view a little bit of the season and gives no longer take that center stage. So we're still celebrating, we're still happy. And as somebody who knows people, I'm being very blessed so far, knock on wood, not to being affected with things like depression, which I heard horror stories, but I do know people, sadly, who are suffering from depression. They have admitted that once they change that perspective and understand Christmas as a season and not just as a climatic date, like the 25th, it helps a little bit. Some of them have told me it helped a little bit with their depression. It's not like a cure of all things, but it gives them a different perspective, because the party's not over. We're still going, and this is awesome. We for a little while had a tradition where we'll go for those 12 days and give little symbolic gifts, like literally it could be chocolate or greeting card or whatever it is, something small, throughout the neighborhood every single day of those 12 days for Christmas. But to each his own. Obviously, this is just a family tradition that I'm sharing. So anyway, this is one of the differences I noticed, culturally speaking, and they're great and all that. But if it helps you, by all means, take it. I like it better, the Catholic way, where you have the feast for 12 days and you get to enjoy, party, eat, and all that kind of stuff. And we still are going. And then after January 6th in the Hispanic countries, we have a big feast. Then on February 2nd, Candlemas, Candelaria, and then next thing you know, we're gearing up for Lent, and the most important day, Easter, and here we go. Next thing you know, ordinary time. Anyway, before I extend myself too much, we're gonna talk about Granada. Why Granada? Well, I'll tell you the reason after I take a little sip of my tea. As you guys start joining in the chat, please comment. Granada or Granada. It's important, and it actually matters to us nowadays, and we can even learn some lessons from it. First of all, Granada is an area of southern Spain, and I'll have a little map here. This is the southern tip of Spain. What you see in green is the southern part is Andalusia, the same name from the horses brand, by the way, the Andalusian horses and all that horsemanship, by the way, we get it from Spain. And the other, you see the ocean there, the Mediterranean and the Atlantic. And then southern, you see Ceuta, which is Africa. Well, when the Catholic kings united in the crown, Ferdinand and Isabel of Castile, and Ferdinand of Aragon, united, they started obviously finishing the Reconquest. The Reconquest started centuries before, but they were really pressuring, they hit the pedal, the gas on the pedal, and they just pushed forward. In order to have this whole concept of a Christian monarchy, they needed to have the whole country. They couldn't have just a secessionist, rebellious part, in this case, Andalusia, the southern part, being Moorish, Muslim. So they said, okay, let's do this. So what did they do? They started a siege. The siege started in 1482. It actually lasted 10 years. And it's a really, really cool story because most people think the siege just like, they start fighting all the time. For those 10 years, it was on and off, almost like a guerrilla style. But that siege was almost a military laboratory for the Christian armies. That's what a lot of techniques developed, modern medieval fighting techniques and all that. Modern techniques, I'm sorry, not medieval. Fighting techniques developed in order to overcome a more powerful rival at that time. Mind you, the Castilian crown and the Spanish crown, united now, were not necessarily super rich. So they had to be very efficient. Those strategies, may I mention, also ended up helping a lot of the conquistadors in the New World because they understood what is to fight against all odds and when the terrain is not favorable to you and all those things. Well, that's why they were able to overcome bigger nations with more population. Even though they have better technology, at the end of the day, a handful of Spaniards, just numbers alone are not going to let you overcome literally thousands of Indians. It's just not going to happen. So you have to be smart because otherwise by mere force, you're not going to overcome them. So anyway, back to Granada. So Granada in the southern part of Spain, which my Spanish friends, I don't know this for a fact, but if there's somebody from Spain here in the chat that can confirm this, I will really appreciate it. My Spanish friends usually think of Andalusians. It's like kind of like the most colorful region of the country. Think of it kind of like the Texas of Spain or the northern Mexico of Mexico, the Monterey of Mexico, things like that. Like kind of like it's the folksy guy, apparently. I don't know. Well, that's what they've been telling me. So if somebody from Spain can confirm that, I will really, really appreciate it. Anyway, so Andalusia is there, and they're on and off winning battles, and finally the tide is turning. So it took 10 years. In those 10 years, by the way, is when during that time frame, Christopher Columbus is introduced to the Catholic kings, monarchs, Queen Isabel and King Ferdinand. And it's during that period of time where the monarchs told Christopher Columbus, we like your plan, but right now we're busy with this whole conquering Granada thing. So as soon as we're done, we'll talk about, this whole voyage thing and plans that you're talking about. All right, cool. So they carry on and things are finally turning around. At the same time, on the Muslim side, there is from the Mohammed Bobadilla, the equivalent of the Sultan, the king over there in the area. They're having internal fights, succession fights. And this is actually a really good lesson for all of us because nothing can hurt an institution, whether it's a family or a country or a society, more than internal quarreling. This is why, you make sure you stay united. Because when we divided, we get weakened. Well, this is a clear example. They got weakened. The Christians got their act together. They're pushing, and it was just a matter of time. And they finally conquered. This is finalized, obviously, in 1491. On November 25th, 1491, Bobadil signs the treaty of the capitulation of basically the Treaty of Granada. And in the treaty, this is something really cool because the treaty gave guarantees to the local population, the local Muslim population. You may be asking, hey, wait a minute, I thought they were kicked out of the Spain. Well, we'll get there in a second. But They offer a lot of guarantees and amnesties so long they collaborate with the Christian kingdom for the Christian cause, as you would expect. Usually, the Christians values the Christian societies. Okay, but because the local population learned that they were defeated, a lot of chaos ensued for a little bit, and a lot of people just started running away. So Bobadil, the Sultan, essentially gave the keys of the city to the monarchs in January 2nd, 1492. And this is the date we celebrate. We just had it past weekend. It was Sunday, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So that's when we counted officially as the taking of Granada. Even though that was official and all that, there were still guarantees offered to the local non-Christian population. Okay, why were they offered? Well, there was this friar that became a great influence in Queen Isabella to the point that he became actually her confessor. And this guy's name is Hernando de Talavera. Hernando de Talavera, or Hernando de Talavera, honestly. And he was a great influence, spiritual influence, literally was Queen Isabella's confessor. He was actually a very humble, wise man. And because he has such a great Christian character, they appointed him Archbishop of Granada, of the whole region. So that's a big chunk of real estate, right? At least at that time. And his approach was, okay, we got this region, we got a lot of non-Christians here. We're going to take a different approach. And this is where the Spanish style of evangelizing actually starts taking shape, in my humble opinion. Because rather than doing any forced conversion or, hard and fast or swift, whatever it is, just forcing people, Talavera had a more mild approach, more conciliatory approach. Talavera said, hold on, let's get to their level. Let's show them the superiority of Christianity, not by bragging, not by forcing, but by humility, by humble acts, by serving, by teaching them, literally by learning their language. So he encouraged the priests in the area to learn Arabic so they can actually communicate the gospel and learn the culture. Does that sound familiar with the evangelization in Mexico or Peru? It's because a lot of that comes from that concept, right? So he was more of a gentle man rather than just one of those hard, inquisitors. This is very relevant because his influence starts spreading eventually. The problem with those approaches, usually upfront, is it takes time. The advantage is you gain influence, right? So things start turning and people are starting kind of like learning, liking it. He's making sure that the guarantees offered by the monarchs are actually insured and preserved. It's not just the government stamp, but he's making sure they're being applied and enforced. Then it comes to the picture another guy, a very famous and influential and a giant of the faith, to be honest, into the picture, which is Cardinal Cisneros. So Cardinal Cisneros, this guy comes from a family of supposedly converts from Judaism to Catholicism. So it's a converso. We call it a converso. And Cisneros is, cardinal and one of the highest rank, one of the big wigs in Spain. And he goes to Granada and wants to, rub his stamp in the whole place. So Cisneros' approach is a little different than Talavera. While Talavera is gentle, he puts up with things, he's, meek and patient. Cisneros is just like no nonsense. We're gonna fix it in a couple of kicks here, and hard and fast. And that didn't go very well with the populace. And there was a couple of rebellions and quarrels. And eventually they had to call the royal army actually to pacify the region. At one point, Cisneros' own life was in danger. So finally, when things settled, once again, Talavera had to mediate negotiations and things like he ended up helping. For example, he offered amnesty to the rebels, saying, okay, if you convert to Christianity, you'll have amnesty, but let's just, once again, let's work this out. We're reasonable people, this, and the other. Let me put the map again once for you guys who are getting in the chat. This is the area we're talking about here. As you can see, It's southern Spain. Beautiful architecture, by the way. All right. So Talavera mediates the conflict in a gentle manner. And, the region gets pacified. Peace wins in the long run. And Talavera understood the difference between, control versus influence. You may wonder, okay, and obviously, we're talking about almost at the end of the 16th century when this happened, 15th century, I'm sorry. So, 1499, all that. By then, Columbus had sailed out of southern Spain, discovered new lands. The American enterprise is just getting started and all that. But at the end, you wonder, okay, why, was there a difference between Cisneros and Talavera? Cisneros was a smart man. He's a polyglot. I mean, he spoke different languages. He helped translating. He helped with the Mosaic liturgy. So this guy was no dummy, right? And he found the universities. He's a great contributor to Christianity. So we're not talking about a guy who was just dumb and careless and reckless. This guy who was very smart. Well, Talavera was humble, just, more patient, sweeter, if you want to put it that way. Well, Talavera understood, like I mentioned earlier, the difference between control and influence. And for those of you who don't know, basically, you can control somebody. It doesn't mean that person is going to do what you want whenever you're not watching. What you're looking for when it comes to influence is for somebody to do what they're supposed to do, whether you're watching them or not. In the case of our faith, for example, you want somebody, you can make sure you can just force somebody to go to mass with you. It doesn't mean they're going to love the mass or understand it. You can explain it to them even. If you're not influencing them, they're not going to appreciate it. And this is important for all of you who are parents, right? Because you want to pass the faith to your kids, and you can make them go to mass, and you should make them go to mass. But really, what you're looking after is more than controlling them, is actually influencing them. Because one day, guess what? They're going to be adults. They're going to have their lives, and you're no longer going to control them. And a lot of parents try to do that often with, I may not be able to control you physically, but I can control you through monetary incentives. Like if you go to mass, I'll pay your rent or things like that. There's many ways that parents sometimes try to control, and obviously it's not going to work. The money runs out, or just they get tired. They no longer care anyway. So this is a great lesson for us as Catholics or Christians in general, as to how to pass the faith. We want to influence like Talavera did. The problem, just like I mentioned earlier, with influence, it takes time. It's not a quick fix. And you really have to put the other cheek, which is exactly what Talavera did. He often chose to put the other cheek, like the gospel. He offered amnesty after, or a kinder approach, and he often stooped down to their level. Sounds like the gospel in a lot of ways, like our Lord, right? What our Lord did to us when he was walking on earth, right? He stooped down and washed feet, and he put up with the disciples that time, and he puts up with us. Like he really offers that servant leadership, and it's a great lesson for us. Unfortunately, we sometimes have it twist that understanding of power, the dynamics of power. Just because Christ served didn't mean that he was not powerful. He was definitely powerful. And in fact, if you remember, and I'm paraphrasing, when they came to arrest Christ, he said, "I am," and I think it's Mark's gospel. If not, correct me please in the comments. The first time they fell to the floor. He was clearly powerful. It's not an issue of that. He was looking for hearts and conversion more than compliance in that regard. And this is the lesson for us to draw, especially nowadays where everything is bombarded against faith, and you cannot escape it, right? The internet, your schools, media is obviously not longer informing. It's just straight propaganda. So, you're competing against influences. And if you're trying to do control while everybody's trying to influence, guess what? You're going to lose in the long run. So I think, should take some notes from Talavera and this whole concept of Granada. What more hostile population than the Islamists, right? That they just lost their territory, their homeland. Well, not their homeland, but like their turf. And they still end up converting to Christianity, right? It's a matter of pride, I guess, or something. They got over it and they could see the gospel. And that's what we want. We want our children, our neighbors, our enemies to see Christ through us, through our servant, through our meekness, through our love, and all those things. And that's the whole point of Talavera. Sure, we can get on our ivory towers and we can always try to pretend to be super trad or super proud or super whatever. It's not bad, obviously, but it's like, but at the end of the day, what point, what's the point? If are you influencing anybody, in a good way? Are there more virtues? Look at Twitter, the supposedly Catholic Twitter, right? Do you honestly think that a lot of people want to convert to Catholicism, seeing those Catholic influencers on Twitter just bickering for who knows what? So what kind of reflection we want to give? So this is why Granada is so important. After Granada, the lessons that were taken to the New World, and the rest is history. A lot of the evangelization happened because of that meek approach that Talavera had, and others. He's not the only one, obviously. Now, like I said earlier, Cisneros, I'm not trying to paint that Cisneros is the villain and Talavera is the saint. They were both great giants of the faith. They just had different approaches and different roles. Cisneros was obviously very skilled at administrative skills. I know it's redundant. He was very skilled at administrating tasks, and he was really good at founding schools and organizing the territory. He even reigned for a little while they had a monarch. While they were looking for a monarch. So he was definitely a very capable man. But life is more than just administrating territories and kingdoms. Life is about passing the faith at the end of the day, right? Passing the torch. And this is where we look Talavera. Cisneros, by the way, ended up dying in 1517, Cardinal Cisneros, about 8 days later after the Protestant revolt. November 8th, 1517, a few days later after Martin Luther starting to rebel against the Catholic Church. So how interesting. And then the rest is history, as we know. But anyway, so that's the main theme of the story of the conquest of Granada. Most people focus on the conquering, the taking the territory back to Spain. In my humble opinion, really the theme of Granada is how the citizens were able to live, under peace and convert to the gospel, in Granada. Because they could, if they would have forced all those things, you're looking at maybe 10, 20 years of just constant guerrillas. And that didn't happen, obviously. And this is the lessons we can take and apply in our lives, like I mentioned earlier, because we're not just trying to gather information here. We're trying to gather information that will help us live our lives as Catholics, especially in this day and age. Cisneros even obviously got fame and power, but Talavera had influence. And also, on a side note, funny thing is, when you go to Spain or people go to Spain for Holy Week, the most intense, or the most sought after, the most touristic spot for Holy Week is going to be Andalusia, the area that Talavera was in charge of when he was made bishop, which obviously is the area of Granada too. So Talavera is kind of slow and steady. For those of you who are parents of toddlers, remember that, slow and steady. Cisneros was just hard and swift, So for those of you who have toddlers or teenagers, keep that in mind. I know you want to lose your mind sometimes, and I get it. I totally understand it. But just whenever you want to lose your marbles, think, okay, Cisneros, slow and steady. Let's be a reflection of St. Joseph, kind of approach, rather than just exploding and getting angry and just, whipping things into shape, basically. Anyway, so that's the story. I hope you like it. And next week, we'll be talking a little bit about Epiphany, or Dia de Reyes, or Magi. And it was going to be really, really cool. Let's check some comments very quickly here in the chat. By the way, y'all got sick, please take care, because I heard there's a lot of colds and flus and all that. Y'all be fine, but still, take care. Nick, will I get in trouble if I mention how beautiful the Muslim architecture in Granada is? Oh, of course not. And who cares if people are bothered? What's true is true. Beauty is beauty at the end of the day, right? And everything that is true and beautiful belongs to the Lord. One of the most beautiful spots in the world. Yeah. And I heard the gardens were amazing. Andalusia, for what I understand, gets really hot. So the fact that we're able to pull those beautiful gardens and all that, it's amazing. It's also one of the, if I'm not mistaken either, one of the most important olive oil growing regions in the world too. I think they produce as much, if not more, than Italy, which that's saying a lot. They also have great bullfighting. The Minute of Catholic. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, Luis. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you very much. Happy New Year to y'all. What'd you guys do? Did you eat a lot? Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you. Feliz Año Nuevo. Happy New Year to everybody. I always get a few gifts from the Nicaraguan side of my family for Dia de Reyes. Really? No way. That's pretty cool. So yeah, like I mentioned earlier, it's it is a really cool tradition. Honestly, growing up in northern Mexico, I had no idea that people did that in Mexico City and Guadalajara and the southern part and everywhere else in the Spanish-speaking world. I was like, what do you mean, like January 6th? That's like just a regular, Magi Day. What's the big deal? They're like, no, this is the day we give gifts. I'm like, that's weird. And later, as an adult, I was like, oh no, actually, we're the weird ones. So, yeah, it's a very interesting tradition. I don't know how we picked it up, but I don't know. It's the U.S. influence, I guess. Catholic in Puerto Rico, they still have Dia de los Reyes going. Awesome. And some parts of Mexico is starting to fade. I mean, not everywhere. And hopefully, and I'm very hopeful. This tradition will stick around and will remain. And from a practical standpoint, it actually makes more sense to give gifts since the Magi offered the gifts to Christ, right? So that's just fitting and in line to this tradition. But I'm not a purist, so if you want to do Christmas, do Christmas. If you want to do Wise Man Day, do Wise Man Day. If you want to do both, do both. The more the merrier, I guess. Just don't forget to include me in that list. In Candlemas is also the day of Nuestra Señora del Buen Suceso, Our Lady of Good Success. It says Our Lady of Good Events. Yeah, not success, that is mistranslation. Yeah, that's a very interesting. I don't get it why they translated to success to suceso, but yeah, it's exactly what Nick is saying. It's event, not success, as achievement. All right. Remember, an initial apparition of Our Lady of Guadalupe also occurred in the 14th century in Spain, if my old memory is accurate. That's absolutely right. And it happened, is La Virgen Morena. How can I be politically correct? Not so much for y'all, but for the algorithms. But the tan virgin, let me put it that way, the not so white virgin, and if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly, it was this wooden sculpture sculpted by Saint Luke himself. Yeah, Saint Luke, Saint Mark. No, I think Saint Luke himself. And it was rediscovered. Obviously, that's why it's darkened. And it's found the first sculpture of the Blessed Mother. And it was named actually Guadalupe because Guadalupe, there's a debate about the meaning of this word for linguists. I'm not a linguist, so I'll let them fight it off. But means Guada, and Lupe means like under the water river, like under the bridge river or body of water, etc. Anyway, and it was found there, and it cured apparently a city of a pandemic, as a matter of fact, and that's why it's important. It's not just because they found a statue; everybody can claim anything, but that was the proof. Apparently, this is statue of the Blessed Mother. It's carved by Saint Luke, the evangelist himself, and did very many miracles. And one of those was cure a town from a pandemic, from pest, if I'm not mistaken. So that's why the name. Camilo Rubiano. Hello, Luis. Greetings from Melbourne, Australia. Hi, Camilo. Thanks for watching us. Hope everything's going great in Australia. Coffee time. I got tea this time, my brother. Tea. I love coffee, like any good Mexican, but I already have my my quota, So I'm trying to keep it healthy. So I'm drinking tea. I do like tea, but I prefer coffee. Let's see. Later in the Americas, she appeared converting millions of praise to her, our mother. Absolutely, yeah. Coatlicue, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, we talked about it the last time about Guadalupe and the name and all that. It's a pretty interesting connection, as a matter of fact. And we'll explore one day with more time and all that. But yeah, I thought you're absolutely on spot. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, Luis. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas to you too. I hope you had it I hope you had a nice holiday season. You got lots of gifts, a lot of friends and family, and you had some nice rest. The Rubianos fought at Granada. Really? Huh? That's how they gained their minor titles. Hidalguía, absolutely. And two of the sons landed in today's Colombia, the New Granada of 1532. Oh, that's a very interesting fact. I did not know that on talking to royalty. That's a pretty cool fact. I didn't know that about you, Camilo. Or about your last name. Amazing that in that time of the Reformation, Our Lady appeared where she knew good soil existed to evangelize for the church. Boom. I like that comment. Can I pin it? Let me put a little star here. There you go. I don't know if Timothy's going to get it. I don't know. I don't care. Anyway, I like that comment. That's pretty cool. That's an actually interesting way to see it. In Cáceres, in Extremadura, in the 14th century. Yeah, I'm talking about Our Lady Guadalupe in Spain. Don't forget the thumbs up. Absolutely. Thank you very much. Jaime saying, Vamos Luis, Viva Cristo Rey. There we go. Hi, Franco. Where's JP? JP Trevino. It's my friend and co-host in Spanish from our political show called Podcasteando, which usually airs on Sunday evenings after we're done with our week. So, but no, we in Podcasteando, we talk more about politics, U.S. policy to be more specific, and how it affects the Hispanic world and even here in the United States. And we explain policy because one of the most misunderstood things outside of the U.S. is, the U.S. People don't understand why we do things the way we do as a society, but also in a government level and all this. So we're trying to explain rather than just, do propaganda or whatever it is that a lot of people do. Podcasteando, if you speak Spanish, check it out. Sunday evenings, usually around 7 o'clock in the afternoon, the evening. It's really cool. I'm not saying that because I'm doing it. It's actually a really nice show. And we have a lot of fun. We use a lot of sense of humor and all that. And it's really informative. Thanks to all. Greetings all the way to the Hoosier State, Indiana, which I like that. I've never been to Indiana. I was telling Jaime the other day, but I do know that my great-grandpa, rest in peace, from my mom's side, went to Purdue. So shout out to those Boilermakers over there in Indiana. Let's see. La Fe de la Iglesia. One of my friends, Jose Plasencia. I believe that thanks to the efforts of Cardinal Cisneros, Spain's faith was strong enough to resist the call Reformation. That's actually a very, very good point, as a matter of fact. And this is why I want to emphasize that Cisneros was not a villain. It's just different roles for different tasks. Cisneros focused more like academic stuff and obviously translating and liturgy and all that. Whereas Talavera was more focused on evangelizing. And it's not either or. I mean, you have to have both. In our day and age, information, keep in mind the contrast. Back then, information was expensive, right? Just because printing was hard and most people were illiterate. So, you have a lot of ways to get confused. Well, nowadays we have an abundance of information. Actually, we have a saturation of information. So people are no longer interested in information. What they're interested in is in influencing. They crave influence. They want to have a good influence. Unfortunately, the people who have the power and the influence are doing, most of them, not everybody, obviously, the wrong type of influence, away from the Lord. And this is where we need to take notes from Talavera. Because, we can talk about liturgy all you want, and we can talk about history and academics and all these things. But if a father who's dealing with a son or a daughter who's pregnant out of wedlock, or a son who's dealing with some drug addiction or some rebelliousness, or, somebody who's struggling with the faith or whatever. I mean, we can throw all these things. That Cisneros did this and translated that, and he spoke like 5 languages. They're not going to care, So we're trying to do is their hearts, for their hearts to turn to the Lord. And this is where, unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever we want to see it, however you want to see it, the best influence is sometimes just the example. And if they don't see us live the faith, if they don't see us clinging to the Lord, if they don't see us being patient, which is extremely difficult for some of us, extremely difficult, right? If they don't see us put up sometimes, they're saying, okay, and put the other cheek, we're not gonna influence. I noticed with some of my, even in my own life experience, to be honest, not to deviate too much, where my grandpa was that gentle influence. I remember seeing him, rest in peace, my grandpa Mario. Every day at 6 o'clock, he prayed the rosary, but he never really forced me or anything. But I remember him faithfully praying the rosary and just going and praying at church, and that had a bigger impact on me than even the seminary or whatever. It's just any other influence. Just seeing him live the gospel and actually believing it, putting his money where his mouth was. That to me had a deeper impact than anything else. But unfortunately, I mean, that didn't happen overnight. We're talking about 18, 20 years of patience and prayer and, dealing with me and being kind, saying like, no, son, let's not do this. And me being obstinate and rebellious, as all of us are when we're young. We know it all, right? So we, because we feel empowered. Well, we have an empowered society right now. We have a woke society. And sometimes we're just have to be very extra patient. All right, I'm running out of time. Greetings from the state of Mexico, nearby Gustavo Madero, where a shrine of Our Lady Guadalupe. Oh, awesome! El Espíritu del Radium. Thank you very much for joining us. Greetings to Mexico. Beautiful, beautiful country. Awesome food, by the way. And I'm saying that because I was born in Mexico, but it is true. All right, we have. Let me drink my tea. Why is Cardinal Cisneros' full name spelled Jimenez now, but in his own time was spelled Jimenez with X? There we go. I was going to respond, but here we go. La Felix is doing me a good favor here. I think it's just a matter of phonics. That's absolutely right. Like Xavier University is Javier University. In Spain, could be used interchangeably with the J. Yeah, it's la J, la X, they go interchangeably. So some Francisco Javier or Francisco Xavier. In Spanish, by the way, we mention it Javier, like, with the X, with the J. We don't make that distinction. In English, it's a little different. But yeah, that's absolutely right. Just like the F and the H in Spanish were interchangeable too. So fierro and hierro were interchangeably used when I was a kid even. So that was just the way it was, just phonetics at the end of the day. All right. About to sign out. Thank you very much. Let me take one more drink of my tea before the last comment arrives, because I don't want to leave anybody out. Last comment, best comment. Happy New Year from outside communist Portland, Oregon. I agree. The gentle influence works with a very hard-hearted. Absolutely. And Lysandra, thanks by the way for that comment. Greetings to Portland. That's at the end of the day, what you're looking for is, like I mentioned, influence. And this is like a long run battle. You have to get involved in that person's life, or if it's your children, which is obviously the most important ministry you can give. I mean, you got to get involved in your children's life. And that's difficult because we're tired, we work, we're worried, and all those things. And instead of worrying, rather, maybe we should be just thanking the Lord a little more and let the Lord worry about our problems. And, he gives the tools to take care of things. And sometimes we got to make sacrifices. And sometimes you have to, not telling everybody how to parent, obviously, but sometimes you just have to let an insult, slip by, and just patient. Once things calm down, you can address it rather than just respond on the spot. Sometimes you gotta draw the line. Obviously, you gotta bring down the law. But my point is that think of it like for those of y'all who like horsemanship. I don't know how many of you guys like riding horses. You can break a horse two different ways. You can get on the horse and break until the horse has no more energy and gives up. Or you can actually get him used to and accustomed in a gentle way. And usually when they do the gentler way, I mean, yeah, it takes a little longer, but the horse actually becomes very manageable, very meek, and it's not as traumatized. And as those of you who know about horses, that's kind of a big deal, because you're talking about getting on the back of a horse. The horse naturally is not wired to have anything in his back. Anything the horse associated on top of his back is a predator. So what you're trying to do is convince the horse is, hey, I'm not a coyote. I'm your friend. You got to trust me. So how do you want to gain that trust? You want to gain it through force, or you want to gain it through influence? Well, it's a lot easier to gain it through influence. It's a lot faster to gain it through just force, but it's not going to last usually. So anyway, that's kind of the way we see it also with children in an era that are being assaulted constantly through media to abandon the faith, and they're being lured into it. So we have to be there influencing them, and we have to be patient, overbearing. And also, that helps us to cling to the cross, right? Because we're kind of the same way. We're kind of the same way, spiritually speaking, to our Lord, and our Lord patiently bears us and lets us, just act sometimes the way we do, and then at the end we, recapacitate and we return to the faith through the sacrament of confession. All right, gotta go. Thank you very much. Don't forget, embrace the sacraments. Go to confession. It's one of the most beautiful, beautiful sacraments out there. It's literally a mini exorcism. It's literally Christ extracting the spiritual cancer out of you. So if you can, please take advantage of confession, and obviously, please pray for all of us. Until next time, my name is Luis Medina, and as we say in Spanish, que viva Cristo Rey.